Hi there. My name is Alyssa Arnheim. I'm host of the Healthy Gut, Happy Child Summits and also founder of the Gut Health Mamas. And this evening, I am going to show you how to make sauerkraut. And first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why sauerkraut is so fantastic. Actually, fermented vegetables in general are super fantastic. They are full of the beneficial probiotic bacteria that you've probably heard about in the news. They support digestion. They are full of enzymes that help you break down your food into the tiny nutrient parts that can actually move into your body. They help fight disease. What else do they do? They support the connection between our gut and our brain, and they support the beneficial, bright, and happy neurotransmitters, the balancing neurotransmitters, GABA, serotonin, and more. So there are lots and lots of benefits to eating these amazing probiotic vegetables that you can make at home. It's so great. So we'll just start with sauerkraut this evening. All you need is a cabbage, some salt, preferably a natural salt like sea salt, and a knife, and a jar. We'll get to the jar shortly. So the rule of thumb when you're making sauerkraut or any fermented vegetables is for every 5 pounds of vegetables, you want to use between 3 and 4 tablespoons of salt. So for a cabbage like this, which I've already weighed just so you can get an idea of how big it is, this is about 2.5 pounds. And so I'll cut out the core. I'll be left with about 2 pounds. I think I'm going to use about a tablespoon of salt for this, maybe a little more. So first I'll start by cutting open the cabbage. And this is a nice, fresh, really juicy cabbage. It's dense. You can see how dense it is. And so it's full of water. And that's important because we're going to be pulling that water out of the cabbage to make some brine for the cabbage to ferment in. When you're cutting up your cabbage, you don't have to be perfect, super easy. You just cut it up into kind of evenly sized shreds. It doesn't take long. And if you want to get some extra cancer fighting properties, you can do the exact same thing with a red cabbage, which has those fabulous cancer fighting anthocyanins that give the red cabbage that beautiful purpley red color. So you can see this is all pretty easy so far. I'm just cutting up the cabbage. The cabbage costs, I don't know, maybe $3 or $4 if you get a really fancy organic cabbage. And I always use organic vegetables because I don't want any of those pesticide chemicals getting into my body or my family's bodies because they harm the bacteria in our bellies. Pesticides are designed to kill, and many of them were designed originally to kill bacteria, so we stay away from those. And let's see, we're getting lots and lots of shredded vegetables here. The whole fermentation process is started by some bacteria that are always on vegetables when they're growing out in the field. They're on the vegetables that you buy in the supermarket, and they're a special kind of vegetable that, a special kind of bacteria that are not present in very large numbers, but they don't need to be very populous. They're the lactic acid forming bacteria, lactic acid bacteria. And in particular, the species that are really important at the beginning of the fermentation process when you're making sauerkraut, fermenting vegetables, are the leuconostoc variety. That is the first set of bacteria that begin the fermentation process. As we put together our jar of sauerkraut this evening, you'll see that I'm submerging the sauerkraut in its own brine. We're going to add some salt, and then I'm going to put it in the jar, and all the moisture in this shredded cabbage is going to get pulled out by the salt, and it's going to create a brine. We're going to submerge the vegetable under that brine, and then only the anaerobic bacteria can thrive. Those are the bacteria that don't need air, that don't need oxygen. So don't aerobic oxygen. And they love it in this anaerobic environment that we're creating for them. So I'm going to salt the cabbage now, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what happens during the fermentation process.
I have some salty cabbage.
I've got a helper here that loves salty cabbage. Hey, do you think you can stir up this salt and cabbage for me?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe a little bit.
Do you want to eat some?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're adding the salt, you can also do it by taste. And
like this.
Like this. We really like salty cabbage here. And what you're aiming for is shredded cabbage that tastes just salty enough that you want to keep eating it, like a really good potato chip. Not too salty, but it's got some salt. You think that's pretty good? Too much salt?
Saltier.
You want it to be saltier?
Mix up more.
Okay, here, I'm gonna hand this to you and you can mix it up in here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move along with a bowl of cabbage that I already started, I already salted. I salted it maybe about an hour ago.
Why did I try some?
You can have some of this, here you go. And the reason I'm doing this is because it makes for a faster video, but also this is how I always make it. I shred and salt my cabbage. I've got it here in a bowl. You can see how it's kind of shiny, glossy, and you might even see that there's some moisture accumulating in the bottom of the bowl. I'm a busy mama like you, so I shred up my cabbage and then I set it aside so the salt can do a lot of the work of pulling the moisture out of the cabbage for me. Otherwise, I'd be pounding it into the jar, trying to pound the moisture out, and I don't have time for that. So here we have our salted cabbage, and I'm going to show you a few ways we can jar this cabbage up. We can put it in a jar with this very simple method over the top, okay? We'll add a weight to hold down the cabbage, and then we'll cover it with a cloth to keep bugs out and just secure it with a rubber band, okay? That's one option. I could use a jar with a weight and this nifty lid that has an airlock on it. There's a pipe that comes up and it opens into this interior chamber. So any air escaping is going to have to come up, go down, and then go out through the water. Air bubbles can get out, but nothing can get in, okay? That's the airlock. I can also use a simple mason jar with something called a pickle pipe on top. So this is just a latex top that has a hole in the top so that pressurized gas can come out, but again, no air can get in. This is really important because you don't want mold or flies or any kinds of that stuff getting in, but you'll need to have a pressure release because the bacteria that are doing the fermenting are actively making carbon dioxide, especially in the beginning, especially those leuconostoc species. And they're also making a little teeny bit of alcohol and a lot of acid. So let's get back to that fermentation story. We start off with these bacteria that are present in small numbers on the cabbage, submerge them under the brine, and they are like, yes, this is our favorite way to grow. So they start growing and they eat the sugars in the cabbage, okay? They eat the sugars and they produce metabolic byproducts. Carbon dioxide gas, which gets bubbly, builds up and needs to escape. Those acids, little teeny bit of alcohol, and as the solution gets more and more acidic, those bacteria can't survive in it anymore. It's too acidic for them. The other thing that can't survive in acidic and a little bit of alcohol kind of environments and anaerobic environments are pathogenic bugs. Pathogenic bacteria, all those pathogens that you're afraid are going to make you sick. They don't like acid. They don't like being underwater. They can't survive. They don't want to be there. But there's another kind of lactic acid bacteria that loves being in this exact situation. And those are several of the lactobacillus species of bacteria. And so another species will take over, start reproducing and eating more of the sugars in the cabbage and making it more acidic, and then it'll be too acidic for them. And so then a different species will move in and be like, yes, this is my favorite acidity level. And they'll start eating the cabbage and make it even more acidic. And this is the process that creates that delicious sour flavor and develops this amazing community of robust, wild probiotic bacteria that then, when they get inside us, they can support our immune system, support our bright and balanced neurotransmitter production. They support our disease-conquering abilities. They support our digestion, our nutrient absorption, all of these things. They crowd out the bad bacteria. So many benefits are associated with the bacteria in fermented vegetables. All right, so shall we pack a jar now? Okay. So like I said, this has been sitting in salt for about an hour at this point. And so it should be nice and damp. Pretty limp, pretty shiny. I'm gonna start packing this jar. And this is my awesome tamper. You can do this just with your knuckles and your fingertips, or you can use a packer like this. You can get a little more leverage when you're using a packing tool or a tamper. And these are available online, super easy to get your hands on them. So one thing to keep in mind is that at different times of year, cabbages are either more moist or less moist. If you are making sauerkraut in the late winter or the spring, your cabbage might be a little dry because it might have been, it's probably, well, because it will have been stored for quite a while. They store really well and they'll get a little drier. If you find your cabbage is not producing enough brine for you to submerge your shreds, you can add another kind of juicy vegetable like an onion or like a carrot or two. These are super moisture-full vegetables that can really help develop a brine. Alrighty. And if that is not enough, you're still looking for some extra moisture, you can add a little bit of lemon juice or even some grapefruit juice. That's actually one of my favorites. Right, so I'm gonna keep packing in here. I can see the brine in the bottom really starting to rise every time I push this kraut down. I'm going to keep adding more vegetables. You want to pack your vegetable in really tightly. You want to try and get rid of those air pockets as much as you can. And get that brine up above the tamper and the surface of the vegetables. And if you're making this with kiddos around, which I certainly hope you do, I love, like I said, to shred the cabbage and salt it. Let that salt do some work for you. And go do something else, like make everyone breakfast or prepare the dinner or bake some cookies or something like that. Then you come back. It's a lot easier to pack your jars and get that brine going.
That's pretty hard.
What are you up to?
Making a big obstacle course.
Oh, and eating my cabbage.
Not mine.
All right, can you see that brine coming up above the tamper there? So this is looking pretty nice. I'm very pleased with this. You want to fill your jar about 3/4 of the way, nice and packed, but only about 3/4 full, so that you have plenty of room for the brine and for those gases. You want room because the gases are going to be bubbling up all throughout the vegetable, and they could push right up and out your air vent. So leave a little extra space.
Guess what? I used all my rope. A new one.
Yeah.
And I used all of it just for this.
You used all of your rope for your project. Very exciting. A lot of projects going on here.
Yeah, Mom is doing one. I'm doing one.
That's true. We're both doing projects. So I'm going to tamp this down a little bit more, and then I'm actually going to pour the brine out of the liquid out of the bottom of this bowl. And then we can use the rest of the fresh salted cabbage in a salad or pack another jar. All right, this is looking great. I'm going to use my fingers to get this all packed in. All right, there you go. So now, have this extra brine. There we go. And this is great, lots of extra moisture here. Okay. And now I'm going to show you again how you would do this if you were going to use the tried and true jar and napkin method. So this jar has got water in it to weight it down.
Can I drink it?
No, good question. So you see how the brine is rising up above the surface of the vegetables. No, thank you.
What can I not do it?
Can you help me put on the rubber band?
No, but I can't help eat this cabbage.
Okay. So you've got a weight holding the vegetable down below the brine. Cover it up with a cloth or a napkin. And there you go. Set this aside for about 4 weeks. You can taste it along the way. And when it tastes just sour enough, is the perfect crunchiness for you, then you get to eat it. Harvest it and eat it. And every batch of sauerkraut is going to be a little different. Very funny. It depends. Get out of here. It depends on the temperature. 55 to 65 degrees is the perfect temperature for vegetables to ferment. It also depends on how much salt. If you put in more salt, you're going to have a softer kraut. And if you put in less, it'll be a crispier kraut. Let's see. I'm going to take this out. I'm actually going to use what's called a pickle pebble. This is just a glass weight. It fits really nicely in through the top of a mason jar, any of these hinged lid glass jars. Le Parfait and Fido are a couple of companies that make these. I'm just going to make sure all my vegetable is underneath the surface of the brine. Push that down. And so with jars that have gaskets, I'm really comfortable just closing the lid and sealing it, because this rubber gasket is going to let the gases out, but it won't let any air in.
Mom, can
So,
I say hi to Daddy?
Yeah, sure. Is he downstairs?
Yeah.
Go ahead. So gases can come out, but they can't get back in. No air can get back in. So this is ready to go to be set on my counter out of direct sunlight. You can put it in a cabinet if you like, and then you get to taste it. So a lot of people that I know have tried making sauerkraut and they've done everything perfectly. And then when it comes to actually harvesting it, actually eating it, which is the best part, they get a little nervous about all that bacteria and they throw it away and they never try it again. And it makes me so sad. So don't do that. Your sauerkraut is safe to eat. What you want to check for is if there's mold growing on the surface of the brine, you want to get that off as soon as you see it. If there's mold growing in the vegetables and it smells terrible, like stinky, like old stinky socks or wet dog, you want to get rid of that. But the truth is, nobody has ever died from making and eating fermented vegetables. And the way you test is you're going to open up your jar, smell it. Trust your sense of smell. Then, if you'd like, you can put some in your mouth. And, well, you want to scrape off any of the top layer that's been out of the brine that looks a little discolored. Scrape it off the top. And then put some in your mouth, chew it up, spit it out. And just notice how it tastes. If there are alarm bells going off saying, this is bad, don't eat it, then don't eat it. Or find someone who makes sauerkraut and have them try it for you. And then the third step is to actually put some in your mouth. If you've passed these other stages, if it smells okay, if your first taste and spit tasted okay, then take a bite, chew it, swallow it, see how you feel. No alarm bells? Enjoy your kraut. And if you want to make sure you have company and feel super safe making your own sauerkraut, then just stay in touch. Join one of my programs. We'll do it together. It's super fun. All right. So thank you for joining me. Let me know how your sauerkraut making goes and enjoy. Good night.